Hello again. One does not like to sound like a moany old person, but sometimes it's inevitable. Things have changed so dramatically in Britain over the last few decades, and when I speak to people, I find that not one of them liked the changes they're seeing or wanted them. Take ringing up the bank, for instance. At one time, it was possible for me to ring up the branch of my bank where my account was and to speak to a member of staff who would be able to sort out some problem easily. This was because the details of my account were right there on the premises and could be consulted. Somewhere along the line, those running banks had two bright ideas. One was to sack all the people who had previously answered the telephone and dealt with customers' inquiries at the bank. And the second was to sack everybody else and close down the branch entirely. Put like this, of course, it sounds quite crazy, and I'm sure if my bank had announced their plans in this way, there would have been an absolute outcry and many people would have closed their accounts. However, there was nothing random or illogical about these moves. They are part of a concerted effort, and the end point will be the abolition of money. It began with call centres. So it was that one day people rang up their bank with a query and found that instead of speaking to somebody in the local branch of the bank, they were instead put through to Bombay. This was immensely irritating because very often the person to whom they spoke sounded like Peter Sellers taking off an Indian, and this would provoke first smiles and then annoyance, as it became clear that the man or woman at the other end of the line could not understand what you were saying, and you had to speak very slowly and clearly as if you were talking to some deaf aunt. Even when they did understand what you were saying, they were incapable of doing anything about it. No sooner was one used to this interesting development when the announcement came that your branch of the bank was being closed down anyway. Much of this is, of course, part of the plan to do away entirely with money, that is to say banknotes and coins, and to ensure that everybody only uses electronic methods to make purchases or payments without ever handling cash at all. Some viewers might have noticed that not only are banks vanishing, so too are ATMs, automated teller machines, which we often call cash machines. 8,000 fell into disuse during the COVID epidemic and have not been replaced. There is a real possibility that these handy gadgets will vanish entirely. This will mean that the average person will have nowhere to obtain real money, even if he or she wants some. This was all happening on a smaller scale before the COVID business, but it has accelerated dramatically now. The supposed desire to avoid germs meant that many places stopped taking cash during the epidemic, and the habit appears to have stuck. I'm bound to say that I never have coins in my pockets these days. I can use my card even for small purchases, such as a second-hand book costing 75 pence in a charity shop. There used to be a lower limit, obviously, for using the card, £5 sometimes, but that's all been abandoned now as well. There are all kinds of knock-on effects which are gradually being seen. For instance, I used to give £2 or £3 to beggars and rough sleepers when I saw them, but since I don't have any money in my pocket now, that's finished. Sometimes I might go to a nearby shop and buy them some food, but this seems really paternalistic, as though I'm making sure they don't squander the money on drink or something. Of course, it is the marginalised in society who are suffering from this move towards an entirely credit-based system where there is never any secret about what you have spent your money on. Eventually, there will be a record of every single purchase. Already in the royal parks such as Greenwich in London, if you want a piss, you must have either a mobile phone or a debit card to gain access to the facilities. You can't use coins. So it is that Poor people, the homeless, a lot of older people as well, are slowly being excluded. For people like me who have no mobile, things are becoming a little tricky already. Obviously, I shall eventually be obliged to carry one like everybody else, and then every move I make will be recorded as well as every penny I spend. So it is that the Indian call centres were really the opening shot in a very alarming project which will strip us of all privacy and ultimately enable our every move and every financial transaction to be monitored by the authorities. It is an awful vision, but it's now very close to fruition,